The football kick-off.
With Sky. Watch every single live Premier League game on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.
All right, bang on 11:30. It's Friday morning, which means it is the football kick-off with Sky. All the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, by the way. And anytime we go live, we'll send you a little notification. Now, I'm delighted to welcome Clive Allen and Colm Boohig to the show this week. Gents, you're both very welcome. It's one of those weeks where the football news cycle has been relatively kind. There haven't been absolutely massive stories, which gives us plenty of time to look at the fixtures. Clive, how are you getting on?
Good morning. I can't hear you clearly, guys, I'm afraid.
Okay, I might try and just redial you back there to make sure that you can, unless that's any better now, is it?
It's all muffled.
Grant. Well, we'll ring you straight back on the Zoom or Skype or whatever it is, and we'll get into these fixtures ourselves. The 5 fixtures that we're looking at: Manchester City against Fulham on Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock is the Premier Sports game. Everton against Leicester at 5:30 is on Sky Sports on Saturday. Then on Sunday, it's Chelsea against Arsenal. It's the early kick-off, 12 o'clock BT Sport. At 2 o'clock, Southampton versus Newcastle and Sky Sports. And then Spurs versus Liverpool at 4:30 on Sunday. What a big game Spurs versus Liverpool could have been.
Oh, it still is. It still is. Come on.
In terms of destination of anything hugely important like the title.
Well,
it has no relevance.
It's an interesting point disparity. By the end of play on Sunday, Antonio Conte could find himself 13 points behind, or it could be a 13-point difference between Spurs and Liverpool. And that is significant for November, first week in November, you know? And so that itself is something to talk about. And also then you have the personalities of Klopp and Conte in the sidelines, and the fact that Spurs are seriously in trouble up front. No Son, possibly no Kulusevski, possibly no Richarlison, so Brian Hill might have to play. Or they could go Lucas Moura, Ivan Perisic and Harry Kane up front. So they have decisions to make, whereas Klopp is making all the noise about all the injuries that Liverpool have. Spurs are actually not too fresh either. So there's an interesting narrative going to it.
Do you think Spurs are still potential title contenders?
No, absolutely not. I never thought they were. They're like, I think they're strong for top 4. Like I think they should be ahead of United. But United proved at Old Trafford recently that they're actually quite ahead of Spurs at the moment under Ten Hag, which I was surprised about. I never considered Spurs for the title. I don't think Conte believes the Spurs can win the title, which is probably the most important thing. Sure, he's still trying to convince them that they're mentally capable of competing with the biggest and best, and also his contract ends in the summer. So it feels like to me that Spurs have to impress him if he's going to renew.
It's an interesting scenario they find themselves in. Let's go through these games. If anybody wants to leave a comment, you can get us on the YouTube stream. If you've got thoughts on the Spurs-Liverpool game. Manchester City against Fulham. I think the most point of interest in world football at the moment tends around whether or not your fantasy football team should include the greatest striker in the world at the moment, because he might miss this because of injury.
Yeah, there's talk of him coming back possibly, but why risk him at home to Fulham? Well, the Fulham are quite good this season, but
excellent.
Julian Alvarez played very well during the week in Sevilla. So why don't you just play Alvarez and save Haaland? Then again, Haaland played, how many more games are there to play before the World Cup? Then Haaland gets an extended break again. I would say if he's in any bit of a doubt, just throw him on the bench. And then, Jesus, like if you're Marco Silva, you're doing okay against City. You're keeping Alvarez at bay, and then himself comes on after 55 minutes. You're like, oh, Jesus, this is a whole other game again. That's the beauty of where they are.
Are they failing to impress at the moment? Are they only okay, Manchester City? What's going on?
No, they're not. They're the thing with Pep, as we know, when he goes on these jazz solos in these big games and he decides to play Rodri left wing, because I think we'll actually get at their right back if we do that. That's the only thing that stops Pep Guardiola. I don't think that they're really faltering that much at all. I mean, how much perfection are you expecting with Man City?
I guess because the team has been improved so significantly by the signing of Haaland, and the team was already close to 100 points in the league.
Yeah,
you kind of did expect them to potentially have an invincible season, or to go on one of those 25 game winning runs that like blows everybody out of the water. It's like, there have been league seasons where they've won the league by November, where we just know but this is going to be a long, slow, steady. They've got the 10-point window and they're just going to keep everybody at arm's length, and that hasn't happened.
Arsenal are 2 points clear right now, but I don't believe for a second that Arsenal are going to win the league.
No, I don't think anybody does.
And I think they kind of know that themselves, Man City.
Hopefully Man City.
Look, this invincible season is really overrated. Arsenal drew 13 matches that season.
I know.
It's a lot of dropped points. City will lapse that.
It is a lot of dropped points, but it is also like a thing in sport, not being beaten by anybody over the course of a season.
It's nice.
Marks you out.
It's nice.
Fairly remarkable.
It was Arsene Wenger's last great moment. It's nice. But, I mean, like, I would take Pep Guardiola's dominance. Like, you could lose the odd game to Southampton, you get over it very quickly. But, like, from a Manchester United perspective, the demolition in the Manchester derby, like, I'd be very content if I was a City fan at the moment. Really, the only thing you're looking for is, can you get adequate replacements for players that are guaranteed starters? That would be kind of it for me at the moment for City. City's biggest worry is Pep's own future. How long he's going to stay for.
Go back to the point you were making about replacements. Who are you talking about? What are you talking about?
Well, if I'm looking at Riyad Mahrez, for example, he's kind of faltered slightly this season. But I'm looking at this like everything's going so well for them. So then you're just looking at, okay, I'm not getting as much as I did last season under Mahrez. He seems a bit affected, maybe by the arrival of Haaland, maybe because he's not a guaranteed starter. A bit like Son with the arrival of Richarlison seems to diminish his ability somehow. And maybe Mahrez just isn't as confident as he was. So stuff like that, or maybe even getting a bit more out of Grealish. Okay, so then I'm like asking myself, can I actually sign players that are better than Grealish and Mahrez? And that's kind of really it. But I think if you're like at their strongest, City are phenomenal. And I suppose the most impressive thing, look, you can have a go at City all you want about how they make the money and the limitless supply that they have of it and having the greatest manager, and it's so easy for them. But since 2017, they've been consistently amazing. And they've blown all proportion out of what makes a great Premier League side. And I think like Alex Ferguson retired at a decent time, because that was the perfect way to end his legacy in 2013 with that last squad that United won the league with. Wasn't brilliant. And then nearly 10 years on, Klopp and Pep have taken the level of football in the Premier League to a limit that I didn't think was possible, especially over more than 2 seasons in a row. That's where we are with it. How would you complain about City?
Well,
just the least of our worries.
And I'm not, obviously we're not complaining. If you're maybe the level of expectation is out of kilter with what any team can actually deliver over a sustained period of time, maybe that's it. Well,
the only thing he can do is win the Champions League. Like, he's done everything he can in the Premier League. Like, I'd be way more worried if I was Jurgen Klopp. The one Premier League title they won was in front of nobody. Like, I'd want to rectify that if I was Liverpool.
Yeah, I mean, they've also had excellent seasons and won a Champions League.
They have, yeah. But we're talking sky-high level here, aren't we?
Well,
that's what I mean.
Yeah, only with City. I don't think you can hold Liverpool to the same standards when they haven't spent the money. I think they haven't spent the same amount of money. They obviously have spent a lot of money too.
I mean, that is a compliment to Liverpool.
Sure.
What Klopp's got out of them.
Sure, but I don't
squeeze the maximum.
I think you have to hold City to slightly higher standards given the investment that has been made over a sustained period of time. So Man City versus Fulham, that game kicks off 3 o'clock on Saturday. And as I said, at the moment, the most jeopardy is about people's fantasy football teams. Clive Allen is back with us. You can hear us now, Clive, I think. Is there any hope that for the rest of the Premier League that games like this Man City Fulham game, that somehow Manchester City sleepwalk into a few? Saturday afternoon 3 o'clock, they almost never play there anymore. You know, Fulham, they probably won't be that familiar with many of the players given they've just come up from the... I don't know, I'm trying to talk myself into it here, Clive. I'm failing miserably.
You're making a good case, but I think that this is such a professional outfit, this Manchester City squad of players. Whenever they're called upon, they know they've got to perform. If they don't perform, they don't stay in the side. They get rotated. For Fulham, I think Fulham have acquitted themselves really well in the Premier League so far. So it's one of those where I think Pep will emphasise it's not a given game. It's one where they would need to go into the break and they'd want to be top of the Premier League as the break approaches. So I can't see anything less than a City victory.
Just to briefly talk about Fulham, the way that they've gone about attacking life in the Premier League, hopefully is a template for other teams to come up. We're going to try and attack. We're going to try and use the ball creatively. We're going to invest in our attacking players. Sure, we'll be defensively solid, but actually we have ambition, and our ambition is not to draw our way to 40 points. It's to try and win games. It's to try and thrill the people who come to Craven Cottage and who I think probably over the last 2 decades have been treated to good quality attacking football generally. So maybe there is something in Fulham's tradition, and this team are the best variation of that.
I think that's right. I think what they've assembled a team that can play in the manner that the coach wants. I think there's still a surprise package to the Premier League. And I think in the early stages of a Premier League campaign, having just been promoted, you need to make it work. And certainly Fulham are doing that at the moment. I think that they will play in the same way that they've played recently. They'll be on the front foot. They'll try to attack City And if there is a weakness with City, if you can get at their back four, they might cause them a problem or two.
Yeah, I think, as we said, it's whether or not you start Haaland. That's the decision to make. He seems to be approaching fitness, and the mood music is that he probably will play.
Yeah, I mean, if Haaland's saying to Pep, I'm totally fine, okay, let's play him. But look, I don't know about you, Clive, but I've been very impressed by Julian Alvarez. What do you think of him?
Yeah, I think he's a valuable member of the squad, and obviously he's a different type of player to Erling Haaland. If Haaland's fit, I think he'll play. He's got a nice rest coming up through the World Cup, so City are going to utilise him to his maximum, because he's going to have a chance to certainly rest. Alvarez, I think, is bright. He's different. He's I would say, it's a big comparison, but Aguero-like in terms of the runs he makes in and around the box, and he looks to be a tidy finisher. So again, it's a different option that Pep has when he plays.
Let's move on to the next game. It's Everton against Leicester. This is Saturday evening at 5:30 on Sky Sports. A real uptick in fortune in both teams' form over the last 4 or 5 weeks in particular, Clive. What do you put the success that Everton are having, and it's relative, I guess, to last season when it was a battle from the start to the end. What is the difference been for them under Frank Lampard recently, do you think?
Well, I think it's Frank Lampard. I think he's been calm. He's obviously been assessing the squad of players that he had. He's got players back, which has been vitally important to him. I think the players they added at the start of the season has helped them. They're growing, I think, as the season's unfolding. They've won and drawn in the last two. I think that breeds confidence that I think they're a tough team to beat at the moment. Everton, obviously, they went to Fulham and got a draw last weekend. They sit mid-table, 12th. I think they'll be happy to have just sort of moved away from what looked to be a perilous position. But they're coming up against a Leicester team, I think, who stuck with their manager. I think we've talked about this over the years. And Leicester, I saw at Spurs not too long ago, play fantastically well and get beat 6-2. And you think, how did they get beat by that many goals? Because they could have scored 5 themselves at Spurs. So this is an intriguing game. I think Leicester obviously still sitting 18th is a difficult one for them. But I think Everton might just edge it with that home favour that they have. It's a really, really difficult game to call.
Yeah, I would say Leicester feel a lot better than where they are in the league at the moment. It's kind of surprising still to see them in the relegation zone, but that kind of emphasises how poor the start of the season was. For me, James Maddison has been absolutely brilliant. He's got 6 goals in the league this season. He's 2 assists. But Clive, it's been 3 years since he played for England. That was a solitary cap. Came on as a sub against Montenegro. Would you take him to the World Cup?
That's a really big question. At the moment, I think we've just got to wait in terms of who's going to be on that plane to the World Cup, because of the way players are finishing this part of the season. Injuries obviously are causing problems to all the national managers. Would I take him? I don't think so, purely because his lack of football. I think that there are other options, players who have been playing consistently who will be, I would say, very fit and very able for the World Cup campaign.
It's a good question, isn't it? What were we going to say?
No, I just take him in a heartbeat. I don't understand Southgate's reluctance at Maddison. I think he's so technically gifted in a very gifted generation.
Where does he play and who do you leave him out?
But it's
he's already getting grief for not putting Grealish in the team, and then he's going to have another
compared
character.
to Grealish. Different, way more central. You can fit him much more nicely into midfield 3, I would say. Now, you'd have to have a discipline too, 100%. But so
who are you dropping?
I'm not necessarily saying I'm dropping anyone in particular at the moment. I'm just saying you have to consider him for inclusion in the squad, not the team necessarily, but the squad as an option.
I think it brings up an interesting point. The traditional World Cup, you had 2 or 3 weeks to get players fit and in form who were in your squad, who you knew really well. Right now, this is a smash and grab World Cup, and any team, this could be like Denmark winning the Euros in '92, where somebody who just has 12 or 13 or 14 fit players who are relatively in form, as opposed to, I've got a massive squad to pick from, how do I distill that down? Well, this guy hasn't played any football for me, but actually, so for example, like Calvert-Lewin, not in anybody's squad at the moment, right? But if he was to score 3 goals in the next 3 games and suddenly look like he is fit and well, right?
But that's what I mean by Maddison. Look at his stats for this season. Like, so he's hit this form just at the right time.
Yeah, maybe.
And also with Maddison, then you have the set piece option, which is exactly the Trent Alexander-Arnold debate.
I guess
that if Southgate doesn't rate him, fair enough, but you'd kind of want him.
But Clive, is he your instinct that the manager, like most managers, quite conservative? They will reward players who have done it for them in the past, but actually it's not as relevant in this tournament as it might have been in previous tournaments, because you're not going to be able to play players into form.
Absolutely, I think that's the conundrum that Gareth Southgate has. I think he'll stick with the ones he knows, the ones that have been to tournaments with him, the ones that have produced the performances and got results for him. The ones he knows what he's going to get from. There won't be too many Mavericks in that squad, I don't think. And Maddison has been outstanding for Leicester in a team that struggled. But I think that when you look at his options with Foden, Mount, there's so many in there. Rice, who will hold that midfield. I think Bellingham has been absolutely brilliant, and he should start for me alongside Rice in that midfield area. There's so many options that I'm not sure that Maddison can make that much of a difference with the players that Gareth has at his disposal.
England and Mavericks. There was a great documentary series on ITV years ago about England's inability to fit Mavericks into their team.
That's right.
Yeah, Rodney Marsh and Glenn Hoddle.
I played with the best of all, Glenn Hoddle. Glenn Hoddle should have played 150 games for his country.
And why didn't he?
Because he was one of the best passers of the ball, footballers at the time, but didn't tackle like other English midfielders. Let's put it that way.
So where was he? Not to talk numbers the way everybody talks numbers now, but let's do it. Where did he play on the pitch today if he was playing? Would he be number 10 today?
Absolutely.
Right.
He'd be a number 10. He'd have a free role. You win the ball with the extra midfield player. You play it to Glenn Hoddle's feet, and then everything happens from there. And as a striker, he was a dream to play with. So
you could actually have picked two of those holding midfielders, like a Steve McMahon and another, would have been Steve Hodge, and then put Hoddle in front of them.
Yeah, always. But we're always thinking defensive. You wouldn't necessarily need to have two holding midfield players, one and two more attack minded, but one of those being Glenn Hoddle. Release him from defensive responsibility.
Yeah.
He was sensational.
That makes sense.
James Maddison 2022.
Well, there you go. I mean, but Chris Waddle probably didn't play as much for England as he might have done given his talent as well. And there's several of those players who were like, even John Barnes was considered creative as opposed to.
But at least Waddle played in Italia 90. At least he had that moment. But Hoddle doesn't have that defining tournament moment that he should have. And I fear for Maddison.
Let's move on, because Chelsea versus Arsenal is a big game on Sunday. This one is at 12 o'clock on BT Sport. The Chelsea, I don't know, is the honeymoon period definitely came crashing down last weekend. Big test just to see exactly how Chelsea responded in the league to that performance. Clive, have you any concerns about their ability to bounce back?
I think the jury's still out in terms of how Potter's going to get the best out of this squad of players. They're 6th. I think they'll be disappointed at that. They're not 1 in 3. I think that is a concern. There's no doubt their Champions League form has been decent, which was important. They needed that with the league form that they've had. But they're coming up against an Arsenal side who are as confident as any team in the country at the moment. And this is a big test, I think, for Graham Potter, for Chelsea. And certainly, whereas I think we thought Arsenal would come unstuck against the bigger teams, all of a sudden they seem to hold that upper hand in terms of the confidence going into these big games as well. So this is a test for Chelsea this weekend.
What have you made of Potter so far?
I like him. I think it's been a very, very difficult job to come into. And obviously being accepted, certainly first and foremost from the players. It looked like they've responded well to him. But now he's having to make those big decisions, changing players' positions and obviously injuries that they've sustained that certainly I think he'll be disappointed about, that there's a few players that are not available to him. So it is going to be a real test for him for just to the end of this part of the first part of the season.
Clive, while you were we were bringing you back earlier when we had the problem with the line, Colm was making the point that he doesn't expect Arsenal to be league champions at the end of the year. I don't think I'm paraphrasing too badly there. And I'd say everybody is kind of in the same boat where Man City are going to win the league. It'll be interesting to see how far Arsenal can take this and how far they can push them. When do people start believing in Arsenal as genuine title contenders? What do they have to do to transform from, oh, that's interesting that they're still doing well, into, actually, that's a team who doesn't have weaknesses that we can see and is genuinely going to be capable of going toe-to-toe with Man City?
Just as long as everybody keeps saying they can't win it, that's the motivation they need. I think, and every big game that comes along, oh yeah, Arsenal coming unstuck this time. I think Leicester City did it a few years back when everybody gave them no chance. Just said, oh yeah, this is the weekend they come unstuck. This is the weekend the wheels come off. They fall apart. They'll disintegrate and disappear. I think that this is a group that the longer the season's gone on and results achieved, they've just grown and grown in confidence and belief. And under Arteta, they have a belief that they can go on and keep winning.
That Leicester point's really interesting, actually. Like, that is exactly what happened that year. The only difference is there was no Pep Guardiola that year. I think that was Pellegrini's last season in charge at Man City, I think. And he announced, I think, in the February that he was leaving as well. So it was a good time, and funnily enough, it was Arsenal who were their biggest contenders that year, and then Spurs right at the end capitulated as well. I've been so impressed with Arsenal, but there is just something about me, like, I just don't trust them to maintain a challenge, and I suppose it's 15 years of inconsistency, really. Do you know? I don't know. Like, they're definitely different this season. They're 100% better, and it's so down to Mikel Arteta and what he's done to that club. However, I don't think they can maintain this.
Yeah, I think he's given the youngsters their head. He's given them a belief. I think they've grown in confidence and matured with the experiences. Certainly at the end of last season when really they threw it away. Spurs obviously got that massive result at the end of the season against them. But from that, they've bounced and I think they've learned they don't want that experience again. And I think they've had a really ruthless streak. The whole squad, when players have come in, they've performed well. And that confidence has grown massively. They're a completely different entity to they were last season.
Phil Egan was making the point outside that Gabriel Jesus, his scoring form in the first 8 weeks of the season was sensational, but it's tailed off fairly significantly since. He kind of needs to start scoring goals in big games like this again, just to remind everybody of how brilliant his start of the season was.
Yeah, absolutely. I think any striker, you get judged by your goals. I think it's 9 now he hasn't scored, so that will be a concern for him. But I think his contribution to the team, to the squad, the way it's lifted the whole club, him, Zinchenko, has played a massive part in just lifting the bar really at Arsenal. So, it will be perfect for the manager and for Jesus to get back on the scoring sheet in a London derby against Chelsea this weekend.
Do you give him a penalty to just break the duck, or do you think about it? Do you talk about it? Do you address it with him, Clive?
No. It's looking at what you did well when you were scoring, the goals, positions you took up, the opportunities that were created. How can you maintain that? And then obviously the final part of it is finishing it off. But if you keep getting in those right places and you you maintain that threat that you had earlier on in the season, the goals will come because he is a goal scorer.
He collided with the post against Nottingham Forest last weekend. That's how close he was, from about 2 yards out. But yeah, he's doing everything else right. You'd be concerned slightly more if it was the other way around, because I don't put him down to just goals. He's providing for others, and they scored 5 against Forest. So I think they're doing quite well. For me, this is the most interesting narrative, if you like, going into this game, is Aubameyang back. After he said he wanted to create a legacy at Arsenal 2 years ago, it's 2 clubs since, and he's back at Chelsea. Now he's the enemy. Clive, would you want Aubameyang at your club?
A goal-scoring Aubameyang, yes. A temperamental Aubameyang, no. And I think that was the dilemma that Mikel Arteta had. He had to make a big call. I think the call that he made for his football club, his team and his football club at the time, was the right one. Obviously, Aubameyang went off to Barcelona. He now finds himself back in the capital at Chelsea. I've played against many of my former teams, and there's nothing more you like than just showing them what you're capable of by putting the ball in the net. So, I wouldn't put it past Pierre Aubameyang certainly putting a goal in for Chelsea this weekend.
Yeah. It's because spicy enough. There's been plenty of little chatter in the back and forth in the meantime, stuff leaking out. So it's about as spicy as it gets in modern football, where it's like, oh, it was great, I love my time there, everybody was brilliant, I really enjoyed myself. And this is like, no, I didn't like him, he couldn't deal with me.
Beforehand, in the tunnel, he'll be all over the Arsenal players. 95 minutes later, he'll have scored a brace, and it'll be 2-2.
2-2 draw is your prediction. Well, that'd be a good game.
So, yeah.
What's your prediction for this one, Clive?
I'm just going to go with a confident Arsenal just to edge it. I think they got a big result there last season. I see them going to Stamford Bridge and getting a win by the odd goal.
Well, that would be a big statement win for them if that happens. So that is 12 o'clock on BT Sport on Sunday. Then 2 o'clock Southampton versus Newcastle is on Sky Sports. Newcastle, the train keeps rolling. They keep doing exactly what they're supposed to do. Just took care of business last week, Clive. I had been predicting at the end of last season that they would be top 4 this year. But I genuinely think that, there's another transfer window to come. Their record signing has barely played since he got injured. He looked good when he was fit at the start. But, notwithstanding all of the issues around the club, the football team itself is playing good football at the moment. Absolutely.
Top class football. They've got a front line, Linton, Wilson, Almiron, who are red hot. Almiron, I think, has taken a little while to just settle and adjust, but he's now showing the undoubted ability that he has. Defensively, they're solid. There's a momentum, and that's a massive word for any team. There's a momentum building, and when that Newcastle support get behind them, they're formidable. There can be some dark times there, and we've seen those, but I think at the moment everything is on the up, and this is a game I see another away trip. They came to London, beat Spurs. I can see them going to the South Coast and beating Southampton.
Ralph Hasenhüttl could be in serious trouble here. I mean, since that win over Chelsea in late August, they've won 1 and lost 5 of the last 8 games. During the summer as well, the hierarchy at Southampton can basically force Hasenhüttl to change his backroom staff. They have faith in the man himself, but not his surroundings. What do you think will change for Hasenhüttl in order for him to keep his job, Clive, or do you see the end as near for him?
Well, it's staying above, that relegation line. It's keeping points ticking over on the board, whether that be with draws. They've only had that one win recently. I think that it's vitally important that they try to stop the run of defeats, which certainly at the start of the season was very poor. It's a difficult one because Southampton are looking down. They're seeing Leicester emerging, point behind them now. I think that Hasenhüttl knows that this is a difficult game, one in which he cannot afford to get beat, I feel.
I think this is going to be a mad season in terms of the relegation battle. There's only 10 points between Fulham in 7th and Forest in 20th. You can throw a blanket over the team, and that obviously includes Liverpool, who aren't going to get relegated at all. But you could see any of those teams who early in the season were like, oh, Brighton, they're doing great. The manager's so good, he's got to go and get the Chelsea gig. And it's like anybody could sink like a stone. And any of those teams at the bottom can also go on a run to get out of it. So nobody is safe at the moment, and that's why trigger-happy chairmen and owners are definitely going to be sacking managers over the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned for that.
I always say that any of those teams down there need a 3-game run. Three matches, 9 points. If they win 3, that just catapults them up the table. If they go 3 games unbeaten, 3 points can be enough to lift them out of what looks like a really dangerous position. So, any of the teams are capable, all the way up to Liverpool in 9th, where we shouldn't see Liverpool, but Liverpool in 9th on 16 points, just 5 points off of the relegation zone. Incredible.
Yeah, and you wouldn't say Brighton and Fulham, their form has been excellent, and Brighton's win last week, you would say. But if the season goes the way it goes, weird things are going to happen, particularly because we don't have one season this year, we have 2 years. We've got the whole break, and then everybody's going to reset in that break, and whoever catapults themselves out of that break at the start, good things are going to happen for some teams, and really bad things are going to happen for some other teams.
You're saying you'll be a wise man now to correctly predict the bottom 3 come the end of the season?
I think it's impossible at the moment.
Impossible? I'm looking at it now. Forest, Wolves. Yeah, I mean, there are 2 that I would say 2 of the 3 will go, and maybe Bournemouth.
I think Bournemouth could go, Brentford could go, I think Palace could go, I think Leeds could go.
Only 3 can go. Only 3 can go.
Yeah.
I could credibly make a case for any of those teams. I think at this stage, so much depends on and also the transfer window doesn't end until the end of January. So you've got this weird time when the World Cup is on, and then another month for teams to influence.
Yeah. Come here, do you give Hasenhüttl credit for conceding 9 twice?
And still keeping his
and
job.
still keeping?
And
Or
keeping
would
his
you be
job,
like,
yeah.
I'm a bit more worried about the 18 goals in 2 games?
No, I think to stay up and to recover from that situation is fairly remarkable.
I think it's a huge testament.
And also,
to
I think the fact that they didn't sack him after that was good stuff. So Spurs against Liverpool. We talked a little bit about this at the top of the show. Clive, what's the truth about the Spurs team? They're like still finding what their identity is a little bit, and they also have some fairly significant injury problems. So maybe we're being too harsh on saying that the performances haven't been at the level that we might have hoped them to be at, and yet at the same time they're still riding high in the table. So where are they in terms of what the manager wants them to be, do you think?
I think they're moving towards what the manager wants. What the manager wants is not going to change. He's going to go about trying to win football matches in the way that he does, whether it be described as defensive first half, dropping off on the front foot second half, forcing the game, as we saw certainly in the Champions League game at Marseille this week. Spurs are third in the Premier League, 26 points. I think at this stage of the season, if they're third going into the break, with obviously players away at the World Cup, as you say, resetting for the running at the start of the second half of the season, I think that Spurs supporters should take that gratefully and say, right, we're in a fantastic position. First and foremost, qualify for Champions League again next season, which has to be a requisite. It's what's on the tin. That's what you're getting. Is what's on the tin.
Is there much more improvement to come, do you think? Let's spool forward and say Conte signs a new deal. What does the next couple of years look like with Conte being backed in the transfer market, for example? Where does the bit? How do they become the team that goes toe to toe with City?
I think that they would have to break the bank. They would have to go very big, sign a player of the ilk of Jude Bellingham, an attacking midfield player who can score goals, who can add goals from midfield, make maybe the midfield area a little bit more dynamic. Certainly, you know, when we're in this position and you were going to have no Son against Liverpool, Richarlison and Kulusevski probably unavailable as well. You would look at it and say that moving forward, more strength in depth in that squad, which I think the manager's already gone on record as saying he needs. And that would be the way that Spurs will progress, certainly in the second half of the season, to add 1 or 2 players in that transfer window.
It does feel like Jude Bellingham, the sweepstakes to win the Jude Bellingham signature is the next great transfer saga.
Yeah, definitely.
I
hadn't factored Spurs in before. Do you think they might be in that sweepstakes?
I hope so. I do hope so, because I think he just has everything that's required for a dynamic midfield player to, I think, be successful in the Premier League. He has a fantastic attitude, engine, technical ability, goal-scoring prowess from midfield. That is exactly what, for me, what Spurs need to add to that midfield compartment.
Liverpool season is a little bit like the final year of Pochettino at Spurs, where they were excellent in the Champions League and not great in the league that year. Was there ever an explanation for why that happened under Pochettino? Is there anything that we can learn from that and apply to this Liverpool team?
Just maybe the demands on those players to perform at that level week in, week out, twice a week. It's never easy, and I know people said it's an ageing Liverpool midfield that maybe need a Jude Bellingham in their midfield, and you could see him fitting there as well. But for Jurgen Klopp, it's maybe the first period in his managerial career at Liverpool where he's coming under scrutiny himself, his changes, his substitutions, the players that he's playing, the players that he's having to play because of the injury problems, and his squad depth is being questioned as well. So it's an unusual situation for Liverpool to find themselves in.
Just got freedom of Liverpool, didn't he, Jurgen Klopp? Yeah, do you know?
Forever.
Yeah,
forever. That's pretty impressive, even if he's bad form at the moment. Like this is going to be such a great match. Like the atmosphere of this stadium, like Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, Spurs Liverpool. This is a proper like winter game where it's going to be dark by kick-off pretty much. But I'd say even coming through the television, it'll be an incredible atmosphere. I first wanted to ask you, Clive, what's the best atmosphere you've played in? Which stadium?
Oh wow, that's It's a difficult one. The Velodrome at Marseille for Bordeaux when I was playing in France. I think always London derbies, so playing at White Hart Lane against Arsenal. There's been a number where, but for me, the best atmosphere I've ever witnessed, and I wasn't actually playing in the game, I was coaching, was the second leg when Spurs played Inter Milan Champions League. The famous Gareth Bale game in San Siro. The return at White Hart Lane, I have to say, was absolutely spectacular. It was, spine tingling. It was a White Hart Lane that was absolutely electric that night. That's the best atmosphere within a club stadium that I've experienced.
The 10-year anniversary was during the week. You know
yes.
That was a decade. Has a player's career ever changed as much at half-time at San Siro in the first of those two matches when Inter Milan were 4-0 up under Rafa Benitez and Gareth Bale came back out and scored a hat-trick and they lost 4-3, and from then on in it was the new Gareth Bale? It was like a player's career changing forever in a quarter of an hour.
Oh yeah, absolutely announced himself to the world and showed what he was capable of. There was a right back by the name of Maicon who absolutely, probably his career went the complete opposite way to that Gareth Bale's after that performance that night.
Did you guys know Gareth Bale had that in him?
Yes, absolutely, yeah. We'd seen it in glimpses in training. He was one of those young lads that when he arrived from Southampton, he was, and no disrespect to him, he was still a baby rather than a young man who grew into this phenomenal physical specimen with undoubted talent, speed. And he did things in training when you had players like Rafa van der Vaart, Luka Modric, who would just sort of stop when he flicked it over someone's head, spun in behind them and left them for dead. And Modric looks at you as a coach and says, did he just do that? And it was, yes, he did. And then he was able to, obviously, it took him some time to develop at Spurs, but once he started and he grew into the Gareth Bale that we know now, he was sensational.
Did he always have that blistering speed? I remember him playing at left back with Southampton in the early days of Spurs because he wore the number 3 and he was seen as a bit of a set piece specialist and a great left foot. But was he always blisteringly fast, Clive, or did he develop that with strength and conditioning?
He had it. There was an absolutely natural athlete there. But yeah, without a doubt, the development that came over, I would say over the first couple of years when he arrived at Spurs, the sports scientists certainly did a lot of work with him. Gareth worked tirelessly to improve his physique, and being the natural athlete he just went on to be something that you just couldn't catch. He's as quick as anybody I've seen.
Give us your prediction for Spurs Liverpool.
I'm going to go for a Spurs victory, which would be a surprise to everybody, I'm sure, listening. But I'm going to go Spurs 2-1.
Spurs should win this now with the league form that Liverpool are in.
They should. They should win it, but I'm going to say it'll be an entertaining 0-0.
Oh, right.
No way. Hope not.
The clammy hand of death from Colm Boohig and 0-0.
Entertaining.
Right, that's this week's episode of the Football Kickoff with Sky. All the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports. My thanks to Clive Allen, always great to have him on the show. My thanks to you, Colm, as well, and to all you folks watching on YouTube as well. We obviously stream this again live on the radio on Friday evening as well. So we'll see you next Friday at 11:30. Take care.
The Football Kickoff
with Sky. Watch every single live Premier League game on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.